After discovering my wife's 5-year affair, and that my stepdaughter helped hide it, I drained every account and threw them out. Now they're threatening to sue if I don't take them back. Hello Reddit I+ here. My name is Ethan Hale. I'm 45 years old, and until 6 weeks ago, I thought my life was something worth envying. I had a wife I adored, Marissa, 41, and a stepdaughter, Tessa, 18, who I'd raised since she was 10. I'm a civil engineer with my own firm in Seattle, and we lived in a modern home overlooking Lake Washington. We had friends, stability, and I thought, love. But here I am at 2:14 a.m., staring at my laptop, trying to put words to the wreckage my life has become. Because the woman I loved for a decade had been cheating on me for 5 years, and the girl I called my daughter, she'd been helping her hide it. It started with something stupid. One Tuesday afternoon, Marissa was away on another client trip to Portland. Tessa was at her part-time job. I was working from home, reviewing blueprints for a high-rise project. My office printer ran out of ink, so I went to Marissa's desk to grab a spare cartridge. That's when I found it, tucked in the back of the drawer, behind a stack of old receipts. A small wooden box I'd never seen before. Inside, a bundle of hotel key cards, receipts from restaurants in cities she'd never mentioned, a movie stub from San Francisco, and a cheap souvenir keychain from Vancouver, a city she claimed she hated. I told myself I was overthinking. I put it back exactly as I found it and went back to work. But from that moment, something inside me shifted. Over the next week, I started noticing things I'd ignored for years. The way Marissa's phone was always face down, how she stepped outside to take certain calls, her vague explanations about late-night networking dinners, and then I did something I'm not proud of. While she was in the shower, I looked at her phone. I only had a minute before she came out, but I saw enough. Messages from someone named D, filled with lines like, "Can't wait to feel you again," and counting down the days. I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed the whole truth before I went to war. That's when I set up monitoring software on our home computer, something she still used for personal emails. 2 weeks later, while she was in Chicago, I opened the data. My stomach turned. There were emails stretching back years between Marissa and a man named Derek Lawson. At first, they were harmless, but then they shifted. Private jokes, intimate language, descriptions of weekends away, credit card statements confirmed it. Hotels, flights, restaurants. 3 separate trips to Vancouver in the last year alone. 5 years. Half our marriage. All a lie. But the knife went deeper. I found messages between Marissa and Tessa, my stepdaughter, the girl I'd driven to school, taught to ride a bike, helped with college applications. She'd been covering for her mother for 2 years, making up excuses, telling me, "Mom just called," when she hadn't, helping hide the affair from me. That betrayal hurt almost more than Marissa's. When Marissa got back from her trip, I pretended everything was normal for 3 days. I barely slept. I barely ate. I just waited for my moment. Finally, I sat her down in the living room, the same place we'd exchanged anniversary gifts last year, and told her flatly, "I know about Derek." Her face drained of color. She stammered something about work misunderstandings until I laid it all out. The emails, the receipts, the trips. When I asked how long, she whispered, 5 years. But it wasn't always physical. And when I asked about Tessa, she admitted her daughter had known for 2 years. That was it. I packed her suitcase, set it by the door, and told her to leave. She sobbed, begged, promised to end it. But I'd already ended us. The next night, I confronted Tessa. She cried instantly, told me she was scared I'd leave if I found out that I was the only father she'd ever had. But looking at her, all I saw was deception. I told her to pack her things. She begged, clung to me, called me dad. I almost broke. Almost, but I made her leave. A week later, Marissa's lawyer contacted me about dividing assets and custody arrangements for Tessa, who isn't even my biological child. In a fit of rage, I emptied our joint accounts. $102,000 straight into a new account in my name. Now, Marissa's family is calling me every name under the sun, saying I'm a monster for kicking Tessa out and taking the money. My own sister says I'm being cruel. But tell me, how do you forgive the 2 people you loved most when you find out they've been lying to your face for years? It's been a month. Tessa's sent me long, emotional emails begging to come back. I haven't answered. I don't know if I ever will, because now I'm starting to realize maybe the life I thought I had never actually existed at all. 2 weeks after I'd kicked them out, the storm finally broke. A sheriff's deputy showed up at my office with an envelope. Marissa was suing me, not just for half our assets, but also demanding spousal support and child support for Tessa. Child support for an 18-year-old who wasn't even mine. I laughed when I read it, but the sound was hollow. I knew enough about family court to understand it could get ugly. especially since Washington's laws sometimes treat stepchildren as dependents if you've acted as a parent. Marissa's lawyer was going to argue that I'd been in loco parentis for nearly a decade and therefore owed continued support. I hired the best attorney I could find, Karen Whitfield, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who had a reputation for dismantling cases like this. When I told her everything, affair, timeline, Tessa's involvement, she leaned back in her chair, tapped her pen and said, "Good news, they picked the wrong guy to try this on." We spent the next 3 weeks building a wall of evidence. Emails proving the affair had been ongoing for years, screenshots of messages between Marissa and Tessa showing their coordinated lies, financial records showing I had never adopted Tessa and had no legal obligation to support her after she turned 18. Karen even dug up a legal precedent where a man in my exact situation had the case thrown out. Court day. The courtroom was small, fluorescent lit, and smelled faintly of coffee. Marissa sat at the petitioner's table with her lawyer, looking polished but tense. Tessa was there too, in a pale dress, eyes downcast. Their lawyer started in with the sob story, painting me as a vindictive father figure who had abandoned a child and financially crippled a faithful wife who had given me the best years of her life. When it was our turn, Karen stood and methodically tore their narrative apart. She read aloud excerpts from Marissa's emails to Derek, counting down the days until I'm in your arms again. Ethan thinks I'm in Chicago, haha. She displayed messages between Marissa and Tessa on a screen for the judge. Marissa, tell him I called after dinner. Tessa, okay, I'll say you're tired from the conference. By the time she finished, you could cut the air with a knife. The judge turned to Marissa, face like stone. Mrs. Hale, you expect the court to order financial support from a man you deceived for 5 years, and for a child who is now a legal adult, knowing she actively participated in concealing your misconduct? Request denied, case dismissed. The sound of that gavel was the sweetest thing I'd heard in months. Outside the courthouse, Marissa tried to approach me. Ethan, please, we don't have to end like this. I didn't even stop walking. That was 6 months ago. I sold the house, bought a smaller condo downtown, and threw myself into work. I've taken up hiking again, something I'd stopped doing because Marissa didn't like getting dirty. I even booked a solo trip to Iceland, a dream I'd put off for years. I haven't spoken to Marissa since court. Tessa sent one last message apologizing, but I left it unread. Forgiveness might come someday, but trust, never again. Life's quieter now, smaller maybe, but it's mine, every bit of it. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Losing 2 people who never truly valued you is not a loss, it's a release.